Welcome to Thematic Block 2, Learning Theme 3. In the previous video, we looked at a process to conduct an evaluation on digital teaching and learning in your school. And we did mention gathering evidence to support your evaluation. We're just going to do a little bit more work on this. The level of proficiency for this video is leadership. So the purpose of this video is to evaluate the effectiveness of digital technology teaching strategies, and we're going to look at what types of evidence to gather to support this. So we saw from the previous video that it's important to have a systematic, transparent approach to data collection. This enhances research rigor and gives authentic insights into student learning. We looked at the role of looking at the current landscapes and how digital tools, the use of digital technologies in teaching and learning has been measured to date. It's important to note much of the research in this area has been qualitative and relying on proven instruments with specific focus. There has been kind of specific studies on specific technologies such as Kahoot that are very quantitative. However, they're very subjective in how they're structured and they're not based on kind of systematic approaches. Also, sometimes the studies conducted by technology companies aren't always rigorous. They have an ulterior motive with regard to, selling their tool. Also, sometimes it just looks at the tool itself rather than how it's used. So Kahoot as at a broad basis, but it doesn't often look at how Kahoot or particular quiz technologies was used. So it's important for you to, when you're evaluating digital teaching learning correctly, that you look at how you're using the technology and the most appropriate way of gathering that. We did look at a wide variety of methods. It's important to note that sometimes authentic ways are really, really important. Authentic evidence collection involves kind of these more situated approaches where you're using the work the student is already doing rather than just relying on gathering additional data outside of the classroom. So these should be used in conjunction with other approaches such as self-rating scales, questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, or more quantitative methods, which we've already looked at and we look at more detail in a while. So authentic evidence collection looks at using existing student work to provide more genuine insights and combining these with other approaches for more kind of holistic evaluation. The quantitative methods then, as we saw, looks at using existing student data or learning analytics from software. So for example, if you're using Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, looking at maybe the number of logins, the time spent on tasks, pre and post quizzes or test scores over time, whether the students' test scores have increased or decreased, or maybe the first test was high, the second test was low, and there might be a particular reason for that. Also looking at things like measurement tools. We looked at some of these in the previous video, but maybe looking at those for self-assessment, particularly like things like the Glassion critical thinking appraisal for tool for critical thinking that measures particular tasks and tools are really, really important. Qualitative approaches, as I said, these involve like observations such as interacting in the class, maybe asking questions and observing how students engage or how many students put up their hands and looking at patterns of that. Also digital artifacts look at maybe things students have done. So if you get them to do something online, such as maybe submit a discussion or reflection or a multimedia assessment or assignment, maybe you can analyse these to determine their depths of learning or if they've achieved the learning outcomes. The reason for using qualitative evidence is that it does capture a little bit more deeper into the nuanced experiences of students. So quantitative will tell you whether test scores have increased or not, whether students have spent a particular amount of time on particular tasks, or if they've made a lot of errors or not, but it doesn't tell you the why. And often qualitative evidence approaches tell you the why behind the story. So, if you look at maybe a student's test scores have decreased, and when you interview the students, they might have been struggling with something particular at the time, or there might have been something wrong with their device or something like that, and it allows you to capture these nuanced insights. So using quantitative and qualitative data together is really, really important to get a bigger picture, and also looking at the perceived impact and the actual impact and how they compare with each other, and maybe the why behind those. A lovely way of also gathering qualitative data that we didn't really look at is through narrative data. And this involves asking students maybe to tell stories, reflect or write a narrative of feelings or emotions or transformative events. So these are good for maybe the perceived impact elements or dimensions you want to measure. So how did you first feel when engaging in digital learning activity? Tell us a little bit about what you enjoyed. Tell us about a time where you felt really motivated. What's the most important thing you learned from the course and why? Maybe we're looking at things like feedback and how it makes the student feel. What language the teacher used, why they were motivated and stuff like that. So it allows you to get a little bit more background about the student's story and things like that, to allow you to get a more holistic picture of the impact of the digital pedagogies. So now you understand the different ways of gathering evidence. It's important to build a comprehensive evaluation framework. Look at maybe combining quantitative and qualitative methods, look at comparing perceived and actual impact and maybe the reasons behind that, and digging a little bit more deeper into the data and the students you have. The students are really critical to this. So in the next video, we're looking at how you might work with your students to gather data and maybe working with the students as co-researchers. Thank you very much.